You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Trump has finally awakened America's sleeping giant. And he's dancing, based on an article by Robert Rye. The giant does not wake by itself. What this story is really about. The source is arguing that Trump's political position is weakening, that his poll numbers are collapsing, and that voters are beginning to reject him and the movement around him. That part is simple enough. The more important point is what the piece accidentally reveals: democracy is not restored by a mood shift. It is restored, if at all, by organized institutional power forcing out the people who have already done the damage. Power still sits with the damage makers. Trump still holds the presidency in the source's timeline, and that means he still controls the machinery he has been using to punish people, enrich himself, and bend government to his will. The article is right to call him corrupt and destructive. It is also right to name the broader ecosystem of big money, fossil fuel priorities, and figures like Elon Musk are not background noise. They are part of the governing coalition that makes this kind of rule possible, that matters, because authoritarian politics is never just one man's personality disorder. One man provides the spectacle. The structure provides the permission. The myth of the sleeping giant story flatters the country. It says America eventually wakes up, blinks, and corrects itself when abuse becomes too obvious to ignore. That is a comforting legend, but it is also a dangerous one. It suggests the system has a moral reflex strong enough to save itself. The source lists McCarthy, the Klan, Vietnam, and Nixon as proof. But those moments were not just awakenings. They were fights. They required institutions, movements, elections, organizing, and sustained pressure. The giant did not merely open its eyes. People dragged it into motion. Pretending otherwise turns democracy into folklore. Trump is not an aberration. The piece is strongest when it treats Trump as a consequence of deeper corruption rather than a temporary glitch. His presidency is described as a vehicle for institutional vandalism, domestic repression, and private enrichment. That is not the story of a rogue actor who wandered into power by mistake. It is the story of a political order that rewards cruelty, spectacle, and extraction when enough elites decide they can profit from it. The article's anger is justified. Its target should be broader than Trump's personal disgrace. The real scandal is that so many institutions proved willing to absorb him, normalize him, and keep functioning around the rot. What comes after the poll numbers? Record low polling is not a solution. It is the measurement. It tells us Trump is politically vulnerable, not that the damage has stopped or that the coalition behind him has collapsed. The source rightly warns against overconfidence before the midterms, but it still leans on the fantasy that repudiation will arrive as a clean historical verdict. It won't. If Trump is checked, it will be because power is taken from him in elections, legislatures, agencies, courts, and public struggle. If Democrats want to be more than the emergency shelter for democracy, they need to treat that as a governing task, not a ceremony of disgust. The system behind the man. The real lesson is not that Trump will become an embarrassment and disappear. It is that American institutions can be pushed toward authoritarian use when money, media, and party machinery align around domination. The story names some of that machinery, but the larger pattern is stark. Elite impunity creates the conditions for political vandalism, and only organized democratic power can reverse it. That is the part worth keeping. Not the myth that America wakes up on its own, but the harder truth that democracy survives only when people, parties, and institutions stop waiting for conscience to appear at the top. You've been listening to Systemic Error, thanks to Alternet for today's article. With the automated voice of Norman, thanks for listening.